Hi everybody, this is Miss Penny with another one of Miss Penny's favorite foods. Again, another one of my grandmother's recipes. It's good to go back and remember how you started when you cooked and how they cooked back in the 50s, which is when I was born in the 50s. So, rice pudding, baked old-fashioned rice pudding. This is a dessert that was on a budget. It's a budget meal. It's a meal that stretches as much as you want it to. And I'm going to show you how my grandmother made hers. So, we're going to start. It is a custard-based pudding. So we are going to make our custard. And we're going to pour it over into the rice. And then we're going to bake it. So let's get started on our custard. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put 2 cups of half and half. We're going to use 2 cups. Now my grandmother, she would make her custard totally from scratch. And that's great. We're going to make ours semi-scratch because what we're going to pour into our custard to help it along, even though we're still adding our eggs, we're going to use 1, 8-ounce box of cooked vanilla pudding. Cooked. Cook and serve. Not instant. Cooked. And this just makes the process a little easier on you. Other than that, this is my grandmother's recipe. The reason hers was from scratch is because she used 8 eggs. We're not using 8 eggs, so we're not making it from scratch like that. However, we are using 2 cups of heavy cream, or half and half. We are using an 8-ounce pack of cook and serve pudding. Cook and serve pudding. To that, we are going to add 3 eggs. So we're still making an egg custard. You have to make an egg custard. For a real rice pudding, it's an egg custard. The same egg custard that you would use if you were making an egg custard pie. So this is just a slight shortcut so that you don't have to use so many eggs. Okay, you're going to put that in there. Next, you're going to put a half a cup of sugar. The other half we're going to reserve for our rice. So a half a cup of sugar, 3 eggs, 1 box of vanilla cook and serve pudding, and 2 cups of either half and half or heavy cream and milk combined. Either way, put that in there. We're going to mix this up for a couple of minutes, not even a couple of minutes, just really long enough for it to be combined. While we're doing that, we're going to get out our casserole dish that we're going to make our rice pudding in. To that, I've got a cup of rice cooked. It's hot. It really is important, if you can, to make it while the rice is hot. And this is just plain cooked rice. That's it. If you have leftover rice, use that. My grandmother used that a lot. A lot of times she'd make extra rice on purpose just for her pudding. But if you do that, it'll still work. But if it's hot, it's always a little easier because you're melting the butter into the custard. Okay, so this is hot rice. To this, we're going to add 1 stick of butter. You can use salted or unsalted, whichever you have. This is unsalted, but you can use salted too. Totally up to you. It's not going to make or break your rice, your pudding. So you put this into your hot rice and you let it start melting. Doesn't have to melt all the way, but you want it incorporated into your rice kernels so that it keeps them separated, and you just incorporate as you go. You don't whip it. You don't want to mash your rice. You just want to blend the butter into your hot rice. To that, we are adding the other half a cup of sugar. Because you sweeten your rice, even though your custard, if we were making homemade custard, you would use a whole cup of sugar in your custard. But because we're starting and fast tracking it with the cook and serve pudding, which already has sugar in it, half a cup of sugar is enough for the pudding, for your custard. So you put the other half in your rice because it's important to sweeten your rice separately, because rice absorbs and it needs to absorb that sugar. Because if you just put the sugar in the custard cannot handle sweetness for the custard itself and all that rice that's going to suck the sugar. It won't be sweet enough. So you have to sweeten your rice. Okay, now let's get our custard. Okay, so this custard, as you can see, it's rich, it's yellow, it's very vanilla-ish. It's very, very, very vanilla. As you know, vanilla is one of my favorite flavors, so yeah. And then we're going to fortify our vanilla by using a teaspoon of it in ours, because you got to remember, when you're making rice pudding is bland. Rice is bland, and it takes on whatever flavor you put in it. So you have to fortify everything, and remember that you are also fortifying that rice. So a teaspoon of vanilla extract and the vanilla pudding, and that helps to fortify the rice. Give it just a gentle stir so that all the rice kernels are not clumped together, and you have, because the custard rises, it's light because of the eggs. So it's going to rise, and your rice is going to be at the bottom. There'll still be some custard in it, of course, but the majority of the rice is going to raise, the majority of the custard is going to stay on top as it bakes. When you cut into the rice pudding, you're going to have this wonderful vanilla custard and the rice. And it's a great texture difference, and it's a great, it marries the two perfectly. So you'll see. To this, we are going to add a teaspoon of nutmeg. A little less than a teaspoon. A little less than a teaspoon. And then you're going to incorporate that. And you're going to just kind of give it a few stirs so that everything is playing nicely in the playground. They all have to get along. So you incorporate it. Okay, the last thing that we're going to put in it is raisins. You can use raisins, which I do a lot, but sometimes I'll use raisins, which is dried cranberries. And for that, let me drain them. I've had these raisins soaking in hot water, boiling water, so that they can rehydrate. And it makes a big difference because then your raisins are going to be tender, they're going to be full, and they're going to give a much better flavor and appearance. So we're going to drain these. And this is for your raisins or your craisins, either one. Now, there's a little trick with these. A lot of times when you are putting raisins in something, the raisins will sink to the bottom. So what you do is you take a little bit of plain flour and you put it in your craisins or your raisins and you dust them. This will keep them buoyant so that they will not sink to the bottom. And then you just spread them out, just spread them out in there and they'll float. They'll float throughout the custard. They'll float throughout the rice. They'll float. And you will not have clumps of raisins, and they're going to be plump and juicy and sweet. So always soak your craisins or raisins when you're making anything like this. Soak them for at least 10 minutes in a little bit of boiling water, just enough to cover them. Set it aside until you're ready for them. Drain the water out. Put a tablespoon or so of flour in there, and they'll adhere to the flour. And then just drop them into the last thing you do before you put it in the oven, just drop them in there, and they'll stay buoyant, and they'll be out throughout the custard. Big difference. But it's a difference that it's worth taking that moment or two to do that. Washing my hands. Okay, so everything's in there. We've got 2 cups of cooked rice. We've got a cup of sugar. We've got 2 cups of half and half. 3 whole eggs. A box of vanilla, cook and serve vanilla pudding. A little less than a teaspoon of nutmeg, and your craisins that you've prepared with the flour and the hot water so that they're plump and they'll stay separate, and that's it. Now we're going to put it in a 350-degree oven, and it's going to take approximately an hour uncovered, and you just let it do its thing. I'll show you the final ingredient, the final product when it comes out. I will cut it and we will taste it so that you can see. But if you're a rice pudding lover, as I am, this is old-fashioned rice pudding. If you got leftovers, try it. If you make some rice, try it. Simple ingredients, easy to make. You really can't mess it up. All right. I'll be with you again as soon as it comes out the oven and we'll taste. All right. Hold on. I'll be back. Here is the rice pudding. And my serving with a dollop of whipped cream on it. That is the rice pudding. Bon appetit. I hope you enjoy it. Homemade, old-fashioned rice pudding custard. All right. I'll see you next time. Be blessed. Bye-bye.